Applause. We may be seated, thank you. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Vincent Magwenya. I'm the spokesperson to the President. I'd like to welcome all of you here on behalf of the President to this G20 Africa Expert Panel Report Handover. But before we kick off the proceedings, let me first recognize the President, His Excellency President Cyril Ramaphosa, and let me recognize the Minister of International Relations and Cooperation, the Honorable Ronald Lamola, the Minister of Finance, the Honorable Enoch Godongwana, the leader, or the chair rather, of the expert panel, former Minister of Finance, Mr. Trevor Manuel, the members of the panel, all the eminent members, ambassadors present, DGs, senior officials, as well as colleagues from the media. Once again, good afternoon and welcome. This is a historic moment that has come with the presidency, or rather South Africa's presidency of the G20, which has presented a very unique opportunity to place at the center of global economic development Africa's developmental priorities, as well as other key pertinent issues concerning our continent. In line with this mandate, Minister of Finance, Mr. Enoch Godongwana, established the G20 Africa Expert Panel, which, as I've indicated, is chaired by former Minister of Finance, Mr. Trevor Manuel, to develop evidence-based policy recommendations that strengthen Africa's voice within the G20 finance track. The overall objective of this African expert panel is to offer strategic advice by exploring and defining strategies that advance Africa's collective development interest through increased voice, effective representation, and the achievement of a reformed and an all-inclusive global economic policy through the G20. With those few words of introduction, I'd like to now invite to the podium Mr. Trevor Manuel to give us a few remarks before handing over the report to the President. Mr. Manuel.
Thank you very much, Vincent, Your Excellency, Ministers, Ambassadors, High Commissioners. Good afternoon to all of you. This has been an amazing journey. I was not hoping to undertake this journey. I was minding my own business one evening in December when I got a call from Minister Godongwana. I should learn to put my telephone off. And he didn't quite ask me, instructed me that we needed to construct an Africa expert group. And we set about doing this. And we were able to convene 26 remarkable, insightful individuals, 22 of whom are on the African continent, and 4 have worked on Africa but live off the continent. The big challenge was that we had limited time to produce a report. We also have represented as panelists 3 Pan-African institutions. One of them is represented by Dr. Anan Morsi. She's the Deputy Secretary General of the UNECA, the Economic Commission for Africa. We have Dr. Patrick Olomo. We thought he'd be here, but he's kind of caught up in Addis at the moment, the head of economics at the AU. And we have Dr. Urama, who is head of economics at the African Development Bank. So having the Pan-African institutions is a great asset to what we've been able to work through. I do want to point out that we also have one of our other South African panelists here with us, Professor Fiona Tugena, sitting at the end. Fiona, welcome to you as well. I'm sure in the course of the week other panelists will join various events. The idea is to take the outputs and to share them. Vincent has given you the broad brushstrokes, but we set our sights on focusing on what is transformative. It's very difficult because we need to do things that are going to distinguish us, but not just raise issues about the rest of the world, but also set tasks for ourselves as Africans, because transformation has to also and very essentially be an African-led moment. So we've examined a series of issues, and part of what we set as a benchmark is how we can improve on prosperity. And we recognize that we can only improve on prosperity if we change what happens on the African continent. It does mean that we have to go back to some of the issues that used to be stronger on the continent, such as industrial economic activity. The idea that we are only a reference point for critical minerals that then get drilled out and taken off the African continent, leaving only poverty, is clearly what would present the antithesis of what the work of this expert panel has been. Few issues have come up important as well. Amongst those would obviously be how we are able to access affordable finance for development. And this means that every country on the continent must be able to hold up credible monetary and fiscal policies, as well as structural reforms in key sectors, including those that are targeted at investment, and then public finance systems that hold their own anywhere and everywhere. I'm saying perhaps because we are the Pan-African institutions are so well represented on the expert panel, we can see the work being done by the Pan-African institutions. And as I will mention in a moment, we hope that a lot more of that work gets done because, Mr. President, this report is not, it shouldn't in fact have covers on it because it's an open-ended report. There must be a lot more work done on the African continent going forward. There are some issues that we've called out as obstacles to the ability to attract investment, including the fact that Africa still presents a bit of a black box. Frequently we hear from investors that they don't know what the returns are going to be. If you don't have policy stability, then there are difficulties. And so persuading people to invest in this environment becomes quite challenging. We've also learnt in the course of this, and one of our panelists has done a detailed body of work, that even the international or the multilateral development agencies, such as the World Bank through the International Finance Corporation, has invested and continues to invest in infrastructure on the African continent. But as that report suggests, they make 5.8 times what they would on the S&P 500. So the profits are there for everybody, and defaults in infrastructure on the African continent are close to zero. So these are fundamentally important issues that we flag, that we'll call out, that need a lot of attention and a platform for engagement with these big institutions in the world. There are also issues, and here we will turn with the B20, the Business 20, which is also in session this week, on some issues relating to banking regulations, because Basel III does present an enormous challenge to infrastructure investment on the African continent. continent. So we have to twin and take these issues forward. There are some issues that have excited Minister Godongwana greatly. And amongst these is the operations of the ratings agencies. What we are calling for is for ratings agencies to declare the metrics that they use, so that when you're comparing one country with the other, you can understand exactly what the basis is. And if it can't be supported by empirical evidence, then I think we have to call out the ratings agencies for unfairly discriminating against African economies. There are also some other opportunities that present. In our work, we have asked how the world can assist countries that are in deep debt distress. And one of the opportunities that presents now is the fact that the IMF has a fair amount of gold. It's 90.3 million ounces, troy ounces of gold. It's still valued at $50 an ounce. It's a historical price, and Mr. President, did you check the gold price this morning?
Yes, I did.
It's just over $4,000 an ounce, so there's a big gap. So much can be done, and part of the recommendations of the panel would be that you can set up a system that allows countries to apply for a special fund created from this gold just sitting in the vaults of the IMF to deal with the development needs of the world, which would put it to far better use. We also pay attention to something that has been very topical this year, the big issue of debt. I say topical because there have been a few reports this year. There's been a report from the Vatican called the Jubilee report. There's been a report from the UN Secretary General, of which I was a part. There was a report also by a group of former African heads of state that draw attention to exactly the same issues. And it's the issue of debt. In fact, as one of our panelists, Danny Bradlow, reminded us, for a long time people didn't want to discuss debt. It was an impolite topic. This year there were 10 reports on debt. So how do we deal with debt going forward? And what causes the debt, and what do we know about debt in countries? And the one thing we can say without fear of contradiction is, in almost no instances do countries default on debt to the bankers. Once countries default, they find themselves locked up for a very long period in negotiations, and while they're negotiating, they can't borrow anew. And so, to avoid getting into that situation of default, countries default not to the bankers, but to their people. The bulk of the African continent now is so extensively underinvested in health that most countries pay more in debt service than they do to health services in their country, and increasing numbers of countries are spending more on debt service than they do on education. So it is a profound crisis. The report calls it out, and the report calls it out so that we can act on this in the future. And so clearly, the report makes very strong commitment to a process that will not be incremental going forward. We're saying that the work of this report is incomplete. Our discussions, Mr. President, and you will deal with this later, I hope, will take us through the AU and energize the work of the Pan-African institutions, to which we'll add other institutions on the continent. And the work will continue to ensure that the mission that was started by that phone call from Enoch Godongwana will continue, and that Africans can look to the future with a lot more confidence about what is achievable. Thank you very much. The President needs to come here so that I can give him a report.
Yes.
You already hijacked one.
It's not his, it's yours. Okay. No, we must come back. They want to see.
Okay.
They want to see. It's not a secret ground. Okay.
Well done.
Thank you.
Okay. Sorry, President.
They want the flowers.
Please come to the center. Thank you.
Nice of this. You experienced. Very experienced. It's nice of this. Okay.
Mr. President? What's wrong? The flag is upside down. Okay, now
The wind is blowing now.
good work.
Thank you very much.
Good work.
A round of applause, please. Thank you very much, Mr. Manuel. Mr. President, before you even take your seat, let me invite you to the podium for your remarks. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Vincent, and greetings to all of you gathered here, ministers, and Trevor Manuel, and all other important people. And believe you me, you are all very important. And I want to apologize for a late arrival. We were launching a new mine in Mokopane, which is called Platte Reef and Ivanhoe Mine. And Trevor, as you were talking about how our country has been cutting off unprocessed minerals, that's precisely what we were dealing with in Mokopane as we launched this mine, which is going to be the largest or the biggest mine on PGM, copper, nickel, and gold in the world, and certainly on our continent. So my apologies for this late arrival. We reflected as we were launching this mine how this mine is actually breaking new ground, in that it is making a very strong departure from mining as we have known it in South Africa as it started. When it started, those who came with money and skills dug up holes all over our country, firstly for diamonds, later for gold, and later for other minerals, copper, tin even, and silver, and chrome, and manganese, as well as platinum, group of metals. As they started, they completely excluded participation by communities, and they dug up those minerals, carted them off to various locales in the world, and as Trevor says, left communities impoverished. And mining, having been the real foundation of our industrial development, started off by impoverishing the people of our country and enriching the few. Since our democracy, we have introduced laws that have almost compelled companies to bring in the communities, to enhance black economic empowerment, so that those who were previously disadvantaged and excluded from economic activity should also participate. And as it started, many in the mining industry as owners and shareholders opposed the move and kicked against it, and they were taken in reluctantly and came up with a variety of schemes and all that to try and circumvent what was the right thing to do. Today, in launching this mine, we were rather pleased that the company has, from the beginning, brought in the community, workers and entrepreneurs into their equity holding, and thus building what I would say is a very inclusive process of enhancing inclusive development at the economic level. So I just thought I should comment about that, but it also links up with one of the priorities that we have set up as South Africa, as you know, in the G20, about how we should deal with critical minerals. I'd like to really welcome this report, and I'm rather glad that we came up with the idea, largely initiated by Treasury, that we should focus on the issues of growth, debt, and development. It is in many ways, particularly for our continent, the first of its part. This follows on the wonderful work that was also initiated during COVID. During COVID, I invited as chairperson of the African Union, Trevor, and others who are also part of this report, to lead the efforts of our continent to deal with the financial challenge that COVID presented us with. And Trevor was in the lead, produced a really good process which also dealt with how countries that are struggling with debt, particularly brought about by COVID, could deal with debt, and we started focusing on the special drawing rights. And they are dealt with in this report as well. And we make great progress. Global South countries only participated, and particularly African countries, to a minimal extent when it comes to special drawing rights. And we were able to argue quite strongly that the quota should be increased. It's good to hear Trevor now say that there is a hoard of gold in the IMF, which they acquired at $50 an ounce, with the price of gold being 4,000. It means it's a lot of money. And Trevor, you asked me a question. Have you calculated what it is today?
380 billion.
380 billion. This is the type of resource that can be made available to deal in part to either guaranteeing or financing the debt of many countries in the global south. I'd like to thank the experts and congratulate you, Trevor, and others for having amassed all these very clever people who are experts across our continent particularly, and also to bring in others from other countries outside of our continent. And also, thank you all for coming up with recommendations. You have not just come up with research ideas, but come up with real recommendations which we can work on. These are recommendations that we would like firstly to discuss with our peers on the African continent, and later obviously discuss them also at the G20 Leaders Summit. It's a good idea to say we should have a borrowers club. Many of the countries in the global south and also in Africa go out, as you correctly said, to borrow money. But they're also always lone rangers. They always work alone and are surrounded by people who, or institutions that loan them money. And the idea that you put on the agenda that there should be a borrowers club. There is a Paris club, a club of lenders, and there's no reason why we should not have a borrowers club, where countries that borrow money get together and share best practice and share experiences. So that is, in my view, a really good proposal which we would like to see taken forward. The idea of a debt transparency analysis as well, which I really welcome, because that is going to assist all of us on a transparent basis to do the analysis of the debt sector, as it also affects a variety of countries on an individual basis, so that countries begin to move away from entering into almost secret debt agreements, which are hardly ever seen or known, and this will help for transparency's sake. And the idea that we should have accelerating productive investment in Africa is particularly what we want to discuss with the African leaders when we meet them together on Friday afternoon or Friday evening. This will stand Africa in good stead because it will be able to empower African countries as we deal with issues of debt, but it should be debt that empowers our countries and also finances our development in a more effective way. I'm hugely attracted to the idea of a concessional finance and development bank so that we get to the financial institutions so that they are also able to put as a mixture of the debt architecture they put forward concessional loans that are better priced than straight line loans, and these will assist many African countries as well. And of course, in our case, the review of the IMF and its role in Africa is also an important aspect, so that we begin to address how the IMF and indeed other financial institutions, including the World Bank, have been funding various countries on our continent. So this, without going into all the recommendations, is a really worthwhile report. The credit rating agencies issue is also an important one, so that when our countries on the continent are rated, and if they have indicators that are similar to some countries of our continent or in other locales in the world, we should not be treated differently. So therefore, this is very good commentary or a recommendation on the credit rating agencies and how we would like to influence them as they rate our countries to approach rating African countries or countries in the global south. So this is a fresh debt financing initiative, which we welcome, and it will go a long, long way in helping us look at finance and look at debt in a more proactive way and a developmental way. And I know, as you correctly say, Trevor, this is still work in progress, but you've all laid a very strong foundation for us to be able to take the work that you've done forward. When we met the Pope in the Vatican, we also commended the Catholic Church for having come up with a Jubilee report. And there is now a number of efforts that are coming through that are going to help us, particularly in the global south, to look at the issue of debt to countries. And you're absolutely correct. We've seen it in our own country, how we have been shortchanging our own people by having to service quite a lot of our debt and reducing expenditure that we should be putting into health, into education. But fortunately, we are now on a path where we're beginning to manage our finances a lot better, and thanks to Minister Godongwane and his team in Treasury, we're beginning to see a downward trajectory. But many countries on our continent are actually crowding out what they should be doing for their own people. They are focusing more on paying off their debt, which is the correct thing to do. But these recommendations are now going to give greater focus for us to look at debt differently. So thank you very much for this report. What we will do is to take it forward. And I think, and I can say this, a number of the recommendations here are going to be found very attractive to the leaders who we are going to meet on Friday, particularly the African country leaders and leaders in the global south. And indeed, we are going to fly to this quite prominently in the G20 Leaders Summit. Thank you very much. Your work follows the work of Professor Joseph Stiglitz, who, as you know, we asked to do a report for us on inequality. So we go into the G20 summit with two weighty reports that have been well thought out, well researched by people who are clever, who are innovative, who are forward-looking, who are experienced, who are thoughtful, who are broad in their analysis, who are absolutely developmental in their approach to world problems. So thank you very much, Mr. Manuel.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Ladies and gentlemen, we've come to the end of these proceedings. But before we disperse, I'd like to invite to the front Mr. Manuel and your team. The President has insisted that he would like to take a picture with the rest of the panel. So I don't want to lose my job over that. So please come to the front, Mr. Manuel and the panel, and join the President for the picture. Minister Godongwane, please join them as well, since you will continue to shepherd the process as it moves forward. We won't leave the Minister of International Relations. Minister Lamola, please join the picture. Thank you very much. You may take your seats. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm also informed that the members of the panel, including Mr. Manuel, will be taking questions from colleagues from the media. So you will have time to unpack issues. At this stage, we will then allow the President to take leave of us for his next G20 commitment. Thank you so much. Yes, sir.
Okay. The journalists don't have to run away. So just to prevent